is waiting for you, and the power you possess. In your satin tights, fight for your rights, and the open white blue. Wonder Woman, Wonder Woman. Now the world is ready for you, and the wonders you can do. Make a heart get down, stop the war with love, make a liar tell the truth. Wonder Woman, get us out from under, Wonder Woman. All our hopes are pinned upon you, and the magic that you do. Stop it cold, make the answers flow, change the minds, and change the world. Wonder Woman, Wonder Woman, you're Wonder Woman.
Oh, hello, world. It's me, Dan Shahin, your old pal. Welcome to Comic Book News. Tonight, wow, I got an exciting show. It's really exciting. This is personally exciting. I've got my all-time favorite cartoonist here, Peter Bagge, and one of my new favorite cartoonists, Noah Van Sciver. I really just got into his work, but man, it's rapidly becoming some of my favorite stuff that I've read this year. If you haven't already read The Hypo or One Dirty Tree or especially Fonte Bukowski, go out and pick them up because they're super awesome. Peter Bagge, do we need to introduce Peter Bagge? I mean, it would be literally easier to name the list of comic book publishers Peter Bagge has not worked for than to name the ones that he has done work for, because I reviewed it in a previous video, and what Marvel, DC, Vertigo, Dark Horse. I saw he did a Ninjak cover for Valiant Comics recently. So I'm like, my mind is blown, as well as Weekly World News and Reason Magazine and so many other things that we'll talk to him about tonight. Now, one of the things that both these guys do is they both do different kinds of comics. They write funny, entertaining fiction comics, and then they also write what I called nonfiction comics. You know, I didn't know what to call this thing. I don't even know if that's the right term. Really, it's comics about real stuff. And it kind of breaks down into historical, biographical, and maybe journalistic stuff. Both these guys have done both of that. And we're going to talk to them. So without further ado, I want to bring in, let's just bring them both in at once. Let's bring in Peter Bagge and Noah Van Sciver. Welcome, guys.
Hey. Hi, nice to be here.
Hey, thanks for coming into the show.
Oh, before I have to ask you something, Dan. During your introduction, there was a drawing of a drooling pig.
Yes.
Did Jim Blanchard draw that?
As a matter of fact, he did, Pete. How did you know? How'd you know?
I just did this drawing style.
Yeah, it's really great.
Yeah.
When I owned a comic book store a lifetime ago, it seems like, he drew a picture for me that I used on a lot of different things, on my tote bag and on my bookmarks. And now I've repurposed it and kept it alive as the Comic Book News mascot. And it's one of the things I'm proudest of about this channel. Thank you for noticing that. That's so awesome.
I'd be really surprised if it wasn't him.
Where was that shop that you owned, Stan?
I was in San Jose, California, and it's still there. It's called Hijinks Comics.
Okay. Oh, okay. Cool.
It's the oldest comic book shop in San Jose. One of the oldest comic shops, I think, in the country still around. I started working there in 1986 when I was 11. And so I'm old. And I worked there, and then I bought it after college, and I did a bunch of stuff. I changed the name. It used to be like a sports shop, but whatever. We're not here to talk about me, guys. We're here to talk about you. We're here to talk about comics, indie comics, nonfiction comics, definitely non-superhero comics, but mostly nonfiction. You guys write a mix of stuff. So, but first, I want to lay out to the people a little game we're going to be trying to play tonight. First, the rules of the game. Before we get started, let me just bring up, this is our mascot, Droppy, for tonight anyway, for this game. And Droppy is all about gratuitous nickname drops. So one of my favorite things on TV talk shows is like when you're talking to somebody who worked with Robert De Niro and he goes, yeah, me and Bobby De Niro, we had a real simpatico thing. So this is what I want us, like, I want to do that so that I can pretend I'm in the know and part of the comic scene in the way that you guys are.
Okay.
Will you join me in this game, please?
Yeah, like I told you, I'll try. I'll try to remember that that's what we're doing.
Okay, and I'll try to gently remind you.
Okay. You'll show Droppy? Is Droppy going to stay there?
I think I'm going to pull Droppy out for now. And since you brought him up, we got to bring in our mascot, Honcho, the hijinks hog. So we'll keep him up there for now.
Okay.
So let's get into it, guys. So
Droppy, when I see Droppy appear, that's when I'm supposed to drop a nickname.
Well, then we would get rid of, we would ditch Jimmy Blanchard's picture, and then we might bring in Droppy.
That's
right. Good old Jimbo. Me and Jimbo,
No, Bleachy. That was his nickname for real. Bleachy Blanchard.
Really?
Yeah.
So
it was another cartoonist, Jeremy Eaton. Do you know his work?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
One time Jeremy Eaton was trying to come up with nicknames for everybody, and none of them stuck, but he just went Bleachy Blanchard, and for some reason it stuck. So for the longest time we kept calling him Bleachy.
So that's even
a terrible nickname.
It's great because you've earned the right to call him Bleachy. I have not, but I will. From now on, it's our logo is by Jim Bleachy Blanchard.
Droppy approves of Bleachy Blanchard.
You got it. Okay, so you know the rules of the game. That's what we're going to play. Let's not belabor this anymore. We're not going to do anything except maybe Droppy. And, you could have a disgusted look on your face if you want, as like a signal that you get that I'm gratuitously name dropping. Okay, so let's go into this thing. Let's talk about your guys' career. Let's just start with like comics and the indie scene in general. Like, what's it like to be a cartoonist in 2020 that is not trying to draw mainstream stuff or necessarily like get a Netflix deal for their big sci-fi concept? I don't know. Noah, why don't you tell me what your experience is like, and we'll come back. We'll do Pete next.
I don't understand what it's like to be a cartoonist right now in this era.
So, like right now in this day and age in your career, man, you're trying to get a name for yourself. You're trying to get your name out there and get your stuff out there, but you're not going to be in a Marvel or a DC comic. So, what is your approach, and how do you get out there? Like, what are you doing to get yourself exposed?
Well, I don't even think about that stuff. I mean, I feel like I spent the first 10 years of my career in comics just trying to get a good solid publisher, which was Fantagraphics was the only publisher I really wanted. And once I started working with them, I just let them carry that load of getting my work out there and stuff. I don't really think about it. I mean, I use my Facebook. I post comics on there, and I have an Instagram.
You got a YouTube channel, right?
Yeah, I have a YouTube channel. It's just about my working on the books that I'm working on and talking to other cartoonists and stuff. But I never wanted to be a superhero cartoonist or anything. Like I'm a graphic novelist. I don't know. Like I looked at guys like Pete and his buddies like back in the 90s and stuff like that. Those were my heroes. Like all the Weirdo magazine cartoonists and stuff like that. That's the crowd I wanted to fit in with. So, I don't know. I mean, Pete, how do you do this?
It's just I've been a professional cartoonist now I was first published like 40 years ago, and it's always been a scramble. It's just into this nonstop scramble. One thing that seems like you're set, like I'm like, okay, I'm set doing this type of comic, and then sales start to dwindle. The publisher loses interest, so you just keep your eyes and ears open for something else to come along, and if it does, take advantage of it. But you just have to be very flexible and just keep your eyes and ears open. Right now, it's funny that, Dan, that you asked about right now, because right now is really crazy. Like there's no comic conventions, and I know that so many cartoonists, that's their main thing, is going to shows, and just doing commissions at shows or selling the self-published work at shows. So this has got to be a really horrible time for a lot of people, especially a lot of younger cartoonists.
Mm-hmm.
It's a horrible time for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Man, retailers are struggling, artists are struggling. The people
Right.
that run those conventions, what are they supposed to do? That's their entire year's income for some of those people. So it's really a tragedy in slow motion.
Right. There's once ages ago at this one, I won't name the comic convention because I don't want these people to know that I'm talking about them. But I sat next to a couple. They were at the booth next to mine, and what they specialized in, they would either do a drawing right there, or they had a lot of these pre-made color Xeroxed drawings already made, and they would do like a very mediocre drawing of any cartoon character: Superman, Mickey Mouse, Homer Simpson, Betty Boop, you name it. They were just, and it was a husband and wife team, and the drawings were like just good enough that you could recognize them. So people would come up and just be like, "Will you draw Roadrunner with Space Ghost?" And they go, "Sure." And they'll do this very mediocre drawing of Roadrunner and Space Ghost together. And and the fans were like, they're always amazed. They were so happy with whatever they did. They draw it really fast, charge like $20. It turns out they only do 3 Comic-Cons a year. They just go to comic conventions that are in driving distance to their home. And that's how they make a living. That's their sole income, is doing 3 Comic-Cons and drawing lousy Wile E. Coyote drawings.
It's a living.
Well, except right now, there's no con. So what are they doing?
Right.
What the heck are they doing?
Well, what are the options? Maybe they're going online. They're connecting with their fans in other ways, like Noah's talking about. He's reaching out to them and trying to reach out to his fans in all these different channels.
Yeah. Because
No,
of the convention, I had a whole tour set up for the complete Fonte Bukowski book that came out. Like it's like that book came out the day that all the bookstores closed. I was like, shit.
Yeah.
And so my whole tour was canceled. And I just got around it by just saying, like, hey, these are the comics I was going to sell at shows. If you want one, just, PayPal me this much money or whatever, and I'll send it to you. And I made a lot of money doing that. Like, I probably made more money just selling directly to people on Facebook and Instagram than I would have if I had to go somewhere and get a hotel room or get a plane ticket or something, So that was how I got through that whole thing,
Huh.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Because people are trying to organize like virtual comic conventions. I really can't see that working. I thought that this would be terrible. It seems like such an impulse thing. Somebody's at an actual comic convention, somebody walks by your booth, and just because they're talking to you and you're standing there and they're looking at your work and something about it appeals to you, so they'll buy it just for that reason. That very personal, impulsive move, and I can't picture people doing that online. But again, the people who are looking at your work, they already were fanciers.
Right. But if you have, I have a closet. I'm sure you do too, Pete. It's like I have a closet just full of the contributor copies of comics that I get sent. So
Right.
I'll just put like hey, I have 6 copies of One Dirty Tree. If you want one, PayPal me this money, and I'll do a little drawing in it or something. And I was able to clean out like a good portion of that stuff just by doing that. It was great.
Yeah.
Well, Pete, it's almost like you teed me up there, though, because not next week, but the week after that, I've got a show about what is an amazing phenomenon developing in my mind in the comic book retail industry, the Comic Book Shopping Network. Okay. This is 24 retailers around the world who each do a stream for 1 hour a day in a rotation. So there is a 24-hour, and they are just sitting in their comic shops, pulling stuff out of the bin, the quarter bins or wherever, and just showing it to people. And they have got people watching this thing 24 hours a day and PayPaling them money.
Yeah.
And they are moving comics that you would never be able to move in your shop individually.
Great. It's a great idea.
So you can order it. What they're showing is all for sale, and then somehow you just order it directly from them.
As a matter of fact, yeah, man, this guy showed he held up his Swamp Thing #1 on one of our sponsors, actually, Arsenal Comics and Games, Timmy Heeg, a sponsor of this show. I just watched the show because I wanted to see what it was all about, and he put this thing up there, and I want that thing, and I paid him, and I got it a couple days later.
Yeah,
it was as simple as that.
Right.
But they've got people watching this thing all day long, 24/7 and buying stuff. So anyway, that's what my point is that, no, what you said is like, yeah, I look for a publisher. The publisher does the work for me. Mm-hmm. What I'm hearing more and more often is that like, doesn't work anymore. The publishers don't have the effort, won't spend the time needed to really do it for you. You got to kind of hustle on your own.
Well, I always did. And I mean, that's kind of the whole thing is like, when you're coming up in comics, you're a self-publisher and you learn how to hustle and be your own publicist. So you kind of have those skills and you will dip back into that skill set, that little box of skills later on. I mean, throughout your career, I don't really just depend on Jack Cohen at Fantagraphics to get press for my book. You know, I take a certain amount of that stuff. I take responsibility for that on my own too, you know, and that's what the YouTube channel is too. It's like, you know, let me just talk about my own books and just get the word out there that these things exist, you know.
So let's talk about these things, guys. Let's talk first about biographical comics, okay? So I got a copy of the Hypo right here. And I got copies of, what do we got over here in the magic bag? I got all the Bagge biographies this year. You know, when I read that Peter Bagge was doing biographies of really strong, powerful women, I said, well, that's great, but I already read Spice Capades. So how's that? Hypo, right? Historical. Woman Rebel, Fire, the Zora Neale Hurston story, and Credo, the Rose Water Lake story. All biographical comics. So let's get into that. Let's get into how you guys draw all different kinds of comics. So how does your approach differ when you get into biographical or historical stuff? I mean, your stuff is heavily footnoted. Pete's is. Noah's.
Mine's not. I remember when that book came out, the Hypo, they were sending out like advanced like little galley copies to everybody. And Gary Groth wrote to me and said, you know, this librarian suggested that you write a bunch of notes about this book in the back so that they can be used in classrooms and stuff like that. And I just was like, I didn't want to create a textbook, Gary. This is just a graphic novel about Lincoln's depression. And he was just like, all right, well, fuck her then. We don't have to do that. I thought, all right.
Oh,
with a lot of graphic novel biographies, I've noticed that something that I deliberately didn't do is rely on captions. A lot of and there's nothing wrong with that, but a lot of comic book biographers, they'll put a lot of information in caption boxes, which in a way, like this one cartoonist, Joe Ullman, it's like the information that's in the caption boxes, I put that in the back. So I kind of had to. Once I decided I didn't want the only caption boxes I'll have is just, it'll say Paris 1922, something like that, just to create a setting. But with the people that are in it, I didn't want in the artwork to be these big, huge caption boxes. But I thought it would slow down the narrative. Yeah. But of course, people would wonder, well, who the heck is this guy? So I wound up putting all that information in the back and went a little overboard with that information in the back. There's although that's like my favorite. That's my favorite part of the books is those back notes.
It might have taken me longer to read those than it did the comic itself. I think it probably did.
Right.
I'm a slow reader.
The book I've been working on for the past few years is a biography of the Mormon prophet Joseph Smith and like the founding of the Mormon religion. And I'm the same. I chose at the very beginning, like, I'm not going to tell this story through captions. I'm going to get rid of all that. And, you know, I'm just going to draw it like you're watching a film, basically. And all the exposition is through dialogue and just action. So the back of the book now, I'm working on all the notes and stuff and explaining, because I know that when it comes out, I'm just going to get so many questions from members of the church and things like that. So I just want to like have a section where I just like explain my reasonings for things that I left out and things that
this one does have this. So you're saying this book will have?
Yeah, it'll have a pretty big notes section in the back.
It made sense that the hypo didn't, because it was just one small segment of Lincoln's life. It wasn't necessary.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's a graphic novel. And that's the same as dialogue. It's not. There's no like narration boxes or any of that stuff. Just
Right.
It's too easy to do captions because you can just go like, and then later on this year this happened or whatever, and then just a little drawing, and then after that, it's just it's an easy way out.
But at the same time, though, I'll be reading a biographical comic. The author is using caption boxes. It's not necessarily a bad thing. Sometimes it works just fine. It's a choice.
I think if it's not overused, it can dominate the pages, and to me, it's kind of a bad. That's when I don't like biographical comics that come out that are not by somebody who's an experienced cartoonist, because I just find the reading of the flow and the page is just not as good as it is when guys like you do it.
Yeah, that's right. My biggest complaint, I know I'm changing the subject a little bit, but my big complaint about comics these days is, as there's been this big switch from like the small floppies to graphic novels, is so many comics that are way too long and really dragged out. I'll start reading it. It's like, the first 10 pages could have been thrown away. I suppose some people like that, but it really drives me crazy. I like when it's old comics, when they're more dense. I love the look of all old comic books, like now more than ever, because they're not quite like that anymore. Comics from the 50s and 60s, they just have this great look and feel to them. They're very, it's just so functional, but the form follows the function, and it's beautiful. It looks great.
Appealing, super, like just like you want.
Right. And fighting. And I guess somebody could say it's formulaic and old-fashioned, and I have nothing against people experimenting, trying to do different things, but they just are, so many of them just are, especially like when you go up to 50, 100 pages and you're not sensing a plot. Yeah. You dread turning the page. It's like, oh, I'm so done with this.
So I mean, and but that seems like your approach to storytelling in general in your fiction comics as well, Pete. You're kind of like you pack a lot of storytelling into every page, and you get a lot out of most panels. Do you find it's a different approach? Because when I looked at your book, at these books especially, I did notice exactly what you're saying. The lack of captions and stuff made it just such a flowing, more effortless reading experience. And a lot of stuff was carried by the emotions in the drawing, and which you're very famous for being able to show emotions, especially like really strong, powerful emotions in those comics. So how does your approach differ in the layout and the panel-to-panel storytelling, if at all?
How do I do that?
How does that differ in your nonfiction stuff from your fiction stuff? Or are you?
I try to tell stories in the same way. I did a lot of journalistic comics for Reason magazine, and those tended to be that my biggest struggle with those was that they were way too caption heavy. Yeah. Especially the earlier stories that I was doing for them. Now I could barely stand looking at them because the captions are way too big. There's just way too much. I should have, I keep wishing I could go back and do them over again just to figure out a way to make it less wordy, more show more than tell. But and over time I've gotten better at that. But now with Reason, I'm not really doing journalistic comics anymore. I'm doing biographical pieces for them. They decided that's all they want me to do, since I'm such a shitty journalist anyway. So it's mainly like political philosophers, and just taking either like trying to encapsulate their whole life in 4 years, or focus on one aspect of the person's life, like Noah did with Hypo, and just zero in on this one time or this one event.
That's a good way to do it, man. The problem with the book I've been working on now is I was like, I'm going to take on Joseph Smith's entire life. I'm going to do the entire story, and I'm going to do it all in 250 pages. And then, now I'm like in the 300s on the pages here, and I'm like still like 10 years away from his death. I'm like, all right.
Well, how long is it going to be by the time you're?
I talked to the publisher, like, I'm sorry, I said 250 pages. There's no way. He's like, just go, and then whenever it's done, it's done.
Who's the publisher?
Abrams.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Great.
So I'm just going and writing as I go along and letting it breathe when it needs to breathe and stuff like that. And I'm not thinking about page count at all. So it's a pretty fortunate position.
Have you read Mike Allred's Golden Plates?
Yeah. He sent those to me. Yeah, I'm not doing anything like that.
I never read it. I don't think I've read that one, or it's been so long since I have. So tell me what the differences would be between your approach and that.
Well, what he did was he just illustrated the Book of Mormon. That's all. That's what that is. I'm not doing that at all. I'm not even touching that stuff. I'm talking about how the Book of Mormon was created, and then how a religion came from that. That's what my book's about. And then how the guy who was responsible for that stuff, I'm writing about his own downfall and death, So it's a pretty freaking wild story. It's pretty great.
I didn't read Allred's, but did Allred take a similar approach to the Book of Mormon that like Crum did with the Genesis book?
Oh, because he did it, and he did it pretty straightforward. But the thing is that Crum was not, Crum was raised Catholic, of course, but he's not religious anymore. And Allred, I believe, is still practicing Latter-day Saint. So that's the problem with it, is that it was very reverential.
Yeah, he wasn't going to deconstruct the Book of Mormon.
Yeah, no. So it's, unless you're like a member of the church, you read it and you're just like, what is this? What's going on here? So I didn't want to do that at all. I'm not doing a book that's for Latter-day Saints necessarily, and I'm not doing one that's for people who hate the church. I'm just telling the story like straightforward. This is what they say happened in the biographies. I'm just gonna read and learn that stuff and turn it into a book.
While doing this, do you, to some extent, admire Joseph Smith?
Not necessarily. No, I don't. I'm not. If he did some good things, I'll draw the good things he did. If he did some bad things, I'll draw the bad things he did. He's not like a hero of mine. So
right.
Yep.
And so then why do you feel the need to tell the story? Just because you think it's a really fascinating story?
Well, I was raised in the church. Until I was 11 years old, but I never knew anything about it. When I got older, I started to kind of reflect upon my own childhood more, and I became curious about what that church was even all about. So I decided that it's like the best way for me to learn something is to kind of experience it through my art. So by going through and reading all this stuff and drawing it, like Pete, that you basically you inhabit this story when you're working on it.
Right.
And so I feel like I'm learning a lot more about my own past while I'm kind of artistically involved in this church's past.
Right.
Well, and so Pete, on a similar topic, like on your selection of the three women that you've done in this series, and are there more coming in this series?
No, it's too much work for not enough money.
Yeah.
So
okay.
No.
But so there's an obvious libertarian connection to all three, right? And it's all three are talked about, or am I wrong about that? That there's any?
Well, Sanger wouldn't describe her as a libertarian, although with her work, her cause, birth control, there's literally nothing that freed people more than that. So in that sense she is, but at least the first half of her life, she was a socialist, self-identified, was very much a socialist, member of the Socialist Party, as was her first husband. Later on, she was more politically, she was more pragmatic. Married a millionaire. That's an awkward fit, being a socialist when you're married to a millionaire and taking fabulous vacations. But the other two, with the Zora Neale Hurston and especially Rose Wilder Lane, that yeah, absolutely, that description would describe the both of them. And they both, well, actually, Rose Wilder Lane was a socialist in her younger days too, but it was her time in Europe. She went to Europe to work for the Red Cross after World War One, and went to Eastern Europe, went to Russia, and that experience began to sour her on authoritarianism, and to the point that eventually she pretty much evolved into a anarchist or minarchist, meaning like this least amount of government possible.
Yes. Yeah,
Whereas
yeah,
Zora Neale Hurston she was born a commie hater. she hated, which put her at tremendous odds with most of her writer friends. Yeah, she was kind of I know this term that they keep using now, cancel culture. She was canceled by all of her peers. They just wrote her off. They disappeared her, and which just has a lot to do with why she died in obscurity. And it wasn't until 10, 15 years after she died that people started discovering her again. But that's also because the people discovering her weren't there. They didn't have this shared history with her. And they didn't have this, if not animosity, confusion. They couldn't figure out where she was coming from. They didn't know where to put it. Well, to this day, people will still describe her as a conservative, but there's nothing that. But then it's like, how do you define conservatism? There's nothing the least bit conservative about her. She was a wild woman. She led a crazy life. So that seems like a terrible description, but that's the problem with a lot of people, where when they discuss politics, they think very linear. Everything is right or left. There's no up or down. And a lot of people too, just out of their own laziness or lack of imagination, they really try to squeeze everybody at the two far ends. You're either all in on one side or all in on the other.
Yeah. We see it happening all the time, and we see it happening in the comic book world these days too. I want to ask you though, Pete, did you identify with Zora Hurston in that way, in the sense that she's an artist, you're an artist, her views were maybe a little out of step politically with what her peers were? Do you feel that kind of pressure from your peers in the industry?
Yes, but I felt like it was, for her, it was worse. For one thing, she was specifically a writer, and it's just so. And when I say her peers, I mainly mean other Black writers who almost all of them adhered to very far left politics, and the stakes are very high. There was this whole notion of how do we deal with the situation that African Americans are in. And how do we improve our lot in life? How do we improve the situation? And they could not get their head around where Hurston was coming from. She just very much believed that they should be independent. She actually would have had a lot more in common with even people like the Black Panthers, some people who came. She wasn't the only Black writer that felt this way, but many years later, like by the 70s, 80s, and now, there are a lot of Black writers that would, who very much see things her way. But back then, it was like almost impossible for her to have, after a while, especially by the 1950s and during the Red Scare, when everybody was super paranoid. The other Black writers, they just had no idea where to put her, So I've never had it's really not awkward for me. It's frustrating, not just amongst my peers, but amongst a lot of people who don't understand where I'm coming from with my politics. Either they don't try to understand, or I'll explain it to them and they tell me that they understand, but then they always snap back. They go back to the bubble that they live in, and then they totally snap back, and then all of a sudden they're interpreting what I think and feel, and they couldn't be more wrong. But but that's true both in the comic world and also day-to-day life. But I don't know why. I
don't know why anybody would think that you're, have really strong opinions when you have a book called Everyone is Stupid Except for Me. Right? So that's what I'm a libertarian leaning guy myself. And one of my problems with a lot of libertarianism is sort of all or nothing objectivism mindset with libertarianism. We're not here to talk about that, though. I want to throw it to Noah because we haven't heard anything from him. What do you got anything to add on this topic, Noah? How do you feel about this?
About Pete's books?
Yeah, well, about, like, so Pete, you're saying what I was trying to get you to say is like, what is your connection to Zora?
Right.
And
no, well, again, just to answer that question very briefly, I agreed and identified and with her worldview, very much shared her worldview. Her lifestyle was very different than mine. She was extremely restless, and she couldn't maintain a relation, like both with her friends and with lovers, boyfriends. As soon as things got a little rocky or weird, or she just simply got restless, she would just bail. She spent her whole life just bailing on personal relations, even friendships, even platonic friendships. People would be like, well, man, I haven't heard from Zora in 10 years. Does anybody know where she lives now? So, but other than that, like her worldview, I very strongly related to.
Yeah. This is kind of a weird direction to go in, but do you remember the Mary Fleener comic that she did about Zora?
Yes, and what Mary Fleener did was she illustrated one of Zora's stories.
Okay, yeah.
You mean Mare?
Oh, damn.
It was a Jamaican wedding. It's preparing a bride for a Jamaican wedding. If I remember. Yeah,
that's a good comic.
Yeah, no, it was great. Yeah, well, she made a Zora T-shirt and gave it to me. Gave me one. So,
awesome.
Yeah, no, it's beautiful.
Well, Noah, let's talk about Abe Lincoln for a second, because there was stuff. One, I never knew Abe Lincoln suffered from depression.
Yeah.
But two, my favorite part by far is when we get treated to a broadsword duel by, our future president. Like these guys, like that's how you settled things back then. Like, oh yeah, let's go have a sword fight in the middle of some island.
Well, he chose broadswords because he had such long arms. He knew he had the advantage. So I watched Barry Lyndon for the first time a couple nights ago. Have you seen that before? The Kubrick movie?
Yeah, I saw it recently.
The duels in there and stuff, and there's that scene at the end where the guy's like gonna shoot him. Wherever you get like one shot and his gun misfires, and it counts. So then he just has to sit there and just wait to be shot, basically. That's great stuff.
But even in the olden days, it was in the heat of a moment that two men would challenge each other to a duel, and then from that point on, 9 times out of 10, both them and everybody else are trying to figure out, how do we get out of this? How do we not do this?
Yeah.
And a lot of times they would intentionally shoot in the air, and usually it'd be like your friend would say, "Okay, my guy is he's gonna miss on purpose, so you should miss on purpose." That supposedly is what happened with Hamilton and Burr. Right. Hamilton was under the impression that they weren't really going to be shooting at each other's heads, that they were just going to shoot up. And so Hamilton shot up in the trees, but Burr was a motherfucker.
It's hard for me to remember the hypo because I haven't even looked at it in so long, but I remember that I like got the inspiration because I still have a comic book series called Blammo that I publish like once a year if I can. And I was doing like different short stories that were based on history for each issue. And I had read like some cracked.com article about how like Lincoln had been involved in a duel. And I was like, oh, I'll make that the story for this issue. And then it just kind of, when I was like learning more about it, it just kind of grew into this bigger thing about his depression and that was happening around that same time and stuff. And I was like, how can I do this story about young Lincoln and leave out all the court scenes that I know that I'm not skilled enough to actually write? So like all that stuff, all the politics, all this stuff is just like cut out of that story because I was like 25 years old. There was no way I was going to learn how to do that. So I just.
But it all started out with you reading about the duel. Really. Yeah. But then his depression took over. That became the main thread.
Yeah, it became more interesting. Like
Right.
This, taking that aspect of somebody who like every American knows is like this great president and all this stuff, and like what happened before that, and let's find like him at his most pathetic, and focus on that and like the indie comics tradition, a depressed guy. Yeah.
And I thought, and that part stood out to me for sure as the most interesting. And the other part was the other period details, like the treatments for depression. Then
all right. Yeah.
We've come a long way since then. You want to talk about how they treated Honest Abe?
Well, what was it? There's like bloodletting. I think they put him in like a really cold bath and then like immediately like a really hot bath.
Yeah, I got it here somewhere.
They gave him, they made him put mercury in his mouth because the pain from the mercury in your mouth would make you forget about your mental depression.
That was like an early form of cutting.
Yeah.
But say what you will, these treatments seem to have worked for Abe, no?
I guess, yeah. That was a true thing. He really did go through all that. And I found the actual medical book that the doctors used to treat Lincoln and just transcribe the stuff from that.
Yeah, here's Honest Abe vomiting mercury.
Crazy drawing.
Not going to get that in a Marvel comic. Well, you might. I don't know. Depends on the comic.
It's so hard. Do you have a problem? Like when you look at your old work, isn't it kind of disgusting to you? Or are you just like, Jesus Christ, get that out of my face?
No, as soon as I see it in print, I think it looks like total shit. And, who am I kidding? Yeah, I'll send something up to the publisher and I'm like, this is fantastic. And then, the moment I see it in print, I can't believe how bad. Every now and then, in fact, I can even think of them. Every now and then, there are comics I did that when I saw them in print, I said, oh, that looks good. That came out really good. But I could practically count them on my fingers how many strips are like that.
Well,
that one came out good.
What was that experience like putting together that complete neat stuff where you're just like, this is hell. I don't want to look at any of this.
But some of the stuff in each stuff I thought came out great.
Mm-hmm. It was great.
There's this one long Chit and Bunny Leeway story that which I did like in 1988. And I look at that and it's like, I don't draw this good anymore. This came out so good. Yeah, but other ones look terrible. Even stories that people like. There's like a long Buddy Bradley story that was very popular, that hippie house story. But even when I was drawing it, I just kept thinking, this art looks so bad. This is such a badly drawn comic. There's even like corners. To this day, I'll look at it, and there's like certain corners of panels where it's like, I must have been getting so frustrated with myself because it'd be like, didn't even bother inking the panel border. It's like, what the fuck was going on with me? Why would
But when you look at that stuff now, does it feel like somebody else did it? Like, I mean, do you relate to that?
Only that I can't imagine why I was making such bad art choices. It's like, why did I pick this particular style? But lots of times, you start drawing it, you're a couple pages in, it's like, all right, I'm committed to the bit. I've decided to crosshatch this guy's jacket, so I have to keep doing it.
Oh man, but I love
and then mental note, never do that again.
I love that era of hate where it's all crosshatched. That's like my favorite. And I think there's like two different kinds of people. There's the people who love when you handed over the inking to, was it Blanchard and Eric Reynolds? And then
but the reason I stopped cross-hatching then was because we were going to computer color, and so the big time-saving device with Photoshop is the bucket tool, and the bucket tool doesn't work if there's cross-hatching. Then somebody has to go in there by hand, God forbid, and
before you learn about layers in Photoshop.
Yes. And I mean, I still could have done it, but it just seemed like it was too much trouble. Here's another thing too, and this is really sad. Is I'm a huge lifelong fan of the cartoonist Chester Brown.
Of course.
Chet Brown.
Yeah,
where's Robbie? But and he liked my comics, but we would say things kind of like being a wise guy. We would like just in emails to each other or talking about each other in an interview, and we'll say kind of like somewhat tongue-in-cheek wise guy stuff, but we both would really take it to heart. And Chester once made fun of how obsessively I was cross-hatching in Hate. And he even sent me a drawing. He drew Chet drew his little rabbit character, and he just cross-hatched it to death. And he goes, "Here, I drew this rabbit Pete Bagge style with just massive dents of cross-hatching." And I totally took it as a dig. I totally took it as an insult. And I thought, am I going overboard with the cross-hatching? Is this too much? So then I was like, I'm going to walk away from it. I'm going to step away. And then later on, one of the most recent times I saw Chester Brown, I don't know if you remember, but he started a title called Underwater.
Of course.
And then a short while after that, I think maybe he did 5-10 issues. And somebody in an interview, somebody said, "Have you read it?" And I go, "Yeah." I said, "But it reads like he's making it up as he goes along. I hope that he knows where he's going with the story." And Chester told me years and years later that he read that interview with me, and he said that I was right. Chester says, "I was making it up as I went along, and I had no idea where I was going with it." So I'm like, "So my interview made you quit the comic?" And he said, "Yes."
Oh, man.
I know, I felt terrible. It's like, I still wanted you to keep doing it. He's like, but he was like, I had no idea where I was going. Just no idea.
Louis Riel, the great.
What was that? Yeah, that was a really good book. Right.
Shit, what should I do?
I'm going to mute you for a second. Hang on just a sec. I'm going to pull you out for a second. Maybe you come back. I'll pull you back in and see if that's any better. Why don't you? Hello? You still there?
Hello. Good?
Yeah, that's way better.
Okay. Yeah. So after that, after Underwater, he did Louis Riel, which is a fantastic book.
Right. And and also paying for
nonfiction, biographical comic too. Fits right in.
Yeah, and talking about notes, like, oh my God, all of his books have giant note sections now. You know, I just bought Ed the Happy Clown, and it's like the newer edition. It's just like half the book is notes in the back.
He wrote notes for Ed the Happy Clown.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
I didn't see that. That's pretty funny.
Classic graphic novel.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about too, while we're still on biographical, let's shift into autobio for a second. Pete, I mean, your stuff kind of counts as autobio. You're a character in a lot of your journalistic comics, but I'm really going to shift it one more over to Noah, maybe, because I just read One Dirty Tree, and I read Hypo, and I was like, this is really good. I liked it. And then I read One Dirty Tree, and I'm like, wow, this is great. I love it.
Wow.
And then I read Bukowski, and I just went, this is the greatest, one of the best comics that I've read this year. Flat out.
And of course, Fante Bukowski is 100% autobiographical.
Right. And, well, you are a character in it too, like literally in it. So, tell me a little. Let's talk about One Dirty Tree for a second, and telling stories about yourself.
Well, it's known on the streets as the Eisner-nominated One Dirty Tree.
Oh, yeah.
So, I did that book on my Patreon. I used to have a Patreon, and I just was like, well, what am I going to do for this thing? I'll just like do comics, just like little pages about everything I can remember from my childhood and this last relationship I was in. And so it had no structure. I was just like throwing stuff up there. And then this Italian publisher named Igor, who's a cartoonist, Igor Tuveri, he came to me and said, like, I'm looking for like a graphic novel for this new publisher that I'm starting. Like, can you put together something? And all I had were these like random pages from this project I was doing on Patreon. So I edited the hell out of it and figured out some kind of structure and put it together for him. So it was published in Italy first. And then it came out in America like maybe 3 years, two and a half years after I had even drawn it. So, when I look at it, it's very sketchy because I was just doing it like very loosely just to throw something up on Patreon for people who were supporting me there. But yeah, it came together okay. I had a few different versions before I settled on that one.
Okay. Did you shop it around? Did you take it to Gare Groth or
no? Because what happened was, the Uncivilized Books is run by this guy named Tommy Kaczynski. That's the name.
Tommy, yeah, Tommy.
And he's a cartoonist who actually has some books published by Fantagraphics. And one time we were signing together at the Fantagraphics table, and he said, "Hey, you should do a comic for my book publisher. I was like, yeah, definitely, I'll do it. And then I just didn't do it. And then some years later, he wrote to me like, I thought you were going to do something for Uncivilized. And I had just done that book with the Italian publisher. So I was like, how about this one? And he published it with them. And that actually, that was a good choice because it's such a embarrassingly personal book that I feel like Fantagraphics maybe would have gotten it out there more. Like I wanted like a smaller.
Yeah. Come on, you're thinking too small, Noah. This is great stuff. It really is. The way you tied in your feelings and your relationship for your dad to your own relationship, you know, the way those themes tied together in the book, it's just really talented writing.
Yeah,
I love
it to go out and promote a book like that because, and even to get reviews for a book like this, because it's not like the hypo where somebody can review it and say like, I didn't like it. It's like, people are going to review it and say like, I don't like this guy. I don't, you know, it's like, it's actually my life. So it's,
yeah, right. Like
the problem with it.
Your main character is really boring, Noah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Well,
so I didn't even promote it really. I should have, but it's like, I couldn't really share it on Facebook because all my family members are my friends on Facebook. So then that's a whole other can of worms. They're all like, you motherfucker, you published this book about our childhood and stuff. So
has there been pushback from your family about the book? Have any of them read it yet?
Yeah, most of them have read it, but I think a lot of them know it exists, but they don't really. I have such a big family. That's another thing. So like a lot of them, they know it exists, but they're not really interested in reading it because it's, you know, it's a comic for one thing, and then also it's like, you know, kind of embarrassing. So,
but nobody got angry with you over
a little bit, yeah, a little bit, but nothing. You know, we're all still friends. So
yeah.
I really did think it was great. Like I said, I liked Hype. I thought Hypo was really, really good. I thought this was great.
You're too kind. Thank you.
How else am I going to get you to come back on the show again? Come on. Plus, all you know, like, what am I going to do? Trash your stuff? Even if I loved it, even if I hated it.
It's honest. This whole fucking thing.
All right. So, guys, okay. That we talked about biography. Oh, autobio. Any notes on that, Peter? I mean, your characters in your fiction stuff, there's obviously a lot of you in all of those. Sure. You are specifically a character in your Reason magazine stuff. So maybe this is a good segue into journalistic comics.
Right.
Because when I you know, put this episode together, I said I need to get the two best people known for biographical, autobio, and journalistic comics, but I didn't have Joe Sacco's email address. So Joey Sacco. Sorry, Joey Sacco.
Dan, did you freeze? Oh, there we go.
Oh, you froze.
Droppy.
Well, by the way, Joe Sacco, did you guys know he's got a new book out this week?
I didn't know that.
I heard he was working on something. I didn't know it was coming out.
Nobody knew. Nobody knows. And it looks great. I can't wait to read it. It's coming this week for me.
Who is the publisher? Is it Fantagraphics?
No.
No, it's not Fanta? Oh.
Nope. I forget who it is, but it ain't them. And it's all about like the environment and exploitation of the environment and stuff. And you know, Joe Sacco, just a master of the page and everything else and storytelling and everything. Yeah. So I'm excited.
With drawing myself in these journalistic comics, I try to keep myself out of it as much as possible, you know, but it is like this consistent having me in there. It is a bit of a trademark. Originally, when I first started doing those journalistic pieces for Reason, I originally considered like never drawing myself, but the publisher argued my editor, I should say, he really wanted me in there. He liked seeing me like as this consistent character to be the star, so to speak. But I'm always a little bit uncomfortable drawing myself or doing it. Every now and then I'll get an idea for an autobiographical comic. And when I have done it in the past, like literally drawing myself, I usually, not so much with the Reason pieces, but with the Reason pieces, I'm either listening to somebody or eating food. And, but in the past, whenever I would draw myself, I'd always make myself look as awful as possible, you know, just, because it really, it terrifies me to think that I'm self-aggrandizing. You know what I mean? I would hate for anybody to feel that way if they'd read a comic by me that had me in it. You know, my worst fear is somebody saying, "Oh boy, look how handsome you drew yourself." Good luck. Years ago, Dan Klaus once said to me, he goes, "Did you ever notice that great cartoonists like Crumb, they make themselves, when they draw themselves so ugly. They always make themselves look so much worse than they are. And shitty cartoonists always make themselves look beautiful."
Wait, who told you that story? Was it Danny Klaus?
Yeah, Danny. Yeah, Danny Boy Klaus.
Danny Klaus. Typical Danny. That's so Danny. So Ethan, and then Noah. I'm sorry, Noah. You draw yourself. So I'm really sorry.
He's a mainstream comics guy.
That's the worst thing you could have said to him.
Well, I was trying for something worse. I was going to say you draw yourself into your comics, and you make yourself look pretty much exactly like you look in your comics. But your character seems to me like really you're making him not having all the noblest motivations all the time and stuff. At least in Bukowski, like. Well,
Fonte Bukowski is like everybody kept saying, like, is this really you? Is it like, are you actually Fonte? So I had to kind of be like, no, I'm this guy, and this guy's even worse than Fonte Bukowski.
I loved it. I love that part.
Thanks.
The ability to be self-critical and look at yourself that way, I just find like very refreshing and like fun.
I'm terrible. Yeah, I'm terrible.
Okay.
Oh, there you go.
I used to have that. I don't have it anymore.
Oh,
it's classic. It's a classic magazine.
Yeah, some Seattle cartoonists, they said Tommy Van Dusen, and, and who else?
Mark Palm,
Simon Hanselman. They both said they wanted to do a new I Like Comics, but I said go ahead. But they wanted to get the original creators involved, but I don't know what to do. Do a drawing.
Pete, ever think about crowdfunding? Have you jumped into that pool or thought about it? I mean, you got every publisher in the world, you got their number, and they want you to publish you, but
not anymore. Nobody's going. Well, it's not the mainstream people. They're not offering me any work.
Can I just say, I always thought you need to reach back to Neat Stuff again and bring back Chet and Bunny Leeway, who you brought up, right, and make your new comic and call it Love. Who wouldn't want to read that?
Yeah, I revived them at one point, but greeted with crickets chirping. You can't. It's hard to go back, and people always say that you should do this character again. For 10 years, I was doing a hate annual. So once a year, I'd come out with a comic book that had a story of Buddy. And the whole time I was doing it, whenever I went to a comic convention, the main question people would ask me is, you should do Hate again. You should draw Buddy Bradley again. I was like, I fucking am. Nobody was reading the thing.
Right.
Yeah, but he was like a sailor at that point.
You made the character totally unrecognizable. Like, I'm looking at I'm like, who is this? What's Popeye? He's doing Popeye comics now?
So many people, even like a lot of my cartoonist friends, they're like, are you bored? Do you hate Buddy Bradley? Why did you change the way you looked? It's so stupid. Even like nice people like Kimmy Deitch, where he was just like, geez, if you're that bored doing Buddy, then just want you to stop doing it. But it's like, no, I thought it was hilarious. His new look, I thought it was so funny. I loved it.
Well, and let's be
nobody else.
You said you did it for 10 years, so there must be a few I missed because I don't think I have 10 hate annuals in my.
There was 9, and then there was 9, and then there was a 10th. I made a 10th story that appeared in a book collection of all those stories.
Oh, then where's that? Okay. Oh, so that's in.
It's called Buddy Buys a Dump.
Okay, I got it. All right, I've got it. Then
the last story's in there. But no, I was enjoying those stories, and I still had so many ideas for him. I had a million ideas for him, but it's just the sales just kept going down, and literally everything else I was doing paid so much better. So I was like, why am I doing this?
Did you get a page rate for those comics?
Excuse me?
Was there a page rate for those hate comics back then or not?
No. Not with Fantagraphics. With Fantagraphics, it's royalties. It's totally royalty. Same with Journal Quarterly, they've given me advances. Fantagraphics, they'll give me some small advance, But it was Marvel and DC, and actually the work I did for Dark Horse, they gave me page rates.
The royalties must have been pretty good for hate back in the 90s, though, right? I mean,
it was very good. And then with Hate Annual, it wasn't. So, and it was neat stuff.
I'll say, Peter, having the frequency of hate come out, was it bi-monthly? I forget, or it wasn't. Was it monthly?
I tried to get it out quarterly.
Yeah.
With hate, I tried to get it out 4 times a year. Didn't always work out that way.
Just even that much more frequent and just keeps you in the minds, I think, more. And it's like, I really look forward to every single issue of hate as it dropped on the stands. And it was like something to look forward to. And then when it became more and more infrequent, it was easier to miss it. And then there's so much time in between it. It might have been like sort of a buyer's habit kind of.
Yeah, well, that's why they have periodicals. When I did 2, what wound up being miniseries for DC, first it was and then it was Sweatshop. They were for that reason they were adamant that they come out monthly, which was such a pain in the butt. Because for one thing, I couldn't do it myself. There was no way I could get out a monthly comic book, so I had to work with other people. But there was no negotiating with that. I would even bi-monthly I would have preferred, but so when I was working on those took up almost all of my time because they were monthly.
Perfect though for this theme of Sweatshop, though, in a sense, right?
That's right.
Okay, so let's segue, guys, into comics journalism here. Let's talk. Noah, I've been trying to get this. You do some stuff for a magazine in Denver, and I've been trying to find it online just because I want to read it and see what it's all about. And I just can't find a single one of those strips. I don't know if I'm just not looking in the right place.
I used to do stuff for a magazine in Denver that was called Birdie that I think is done now because of the coronavirus. But it wasn't, it was just like random goofy stuff. I don't know. There's nothing.
There's some music stuff though that you did
for about 8 years. I did a music comic strip for the Alt Weekly in Denver called Westward until I left Denver in 2015. But those are not worth reprinting. They're just like, interviews with bands that don't exist anymore and never did anything anyway. So.
In comics form, though.
Yeah, in comics form, yeah.
And so now you're doing those still musical comics, right? You want to talk about your Grateful Dead project?
Oh yeah. Well, I did that's the book that I just got a bunch of boxes here at my house just the other day about those. I just did a biography of the Grateful Dead for Rhino Records and Z2. And the writer was Chris Shahin, and we just worked on it all last year, and it just came out. So see, it comes like
Did he do all the writing?
Yeah, he did all the writing. I was just the artist on it. I didn't even color it.
Did he need your help breaking it down into a comic strip? Like, did you contribute to the writing that way?
I mean, I just got a script that was like a movie script, basically,
Right. So you had to break it down into a comic. Yeah. Was it the same with your Johnny Appleseed book?
Yep.
Because somebody else wrote that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Paul Mule.
You were the one that had to break it down into a comic strip.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
how did those kind of collaborations come together? How did you hook up with those people?
Well, for the Grateful Dead one, they were looking for somebody who had a cartooning style that was sort of underground comics-y, of that lineage, So they came to me, and also somebody who works fast. So I was the guy, and I picked up the work, and I think it's supposed to be like a series. Like the whole like idea is that we're going to do this as like the entire history of the band. So this is just the first part. This is like for when they were called the Warlocks up until Woodstock, and that's the ending of this.
Oh, okay.
So it's like the 60s.
Yeah, it's the 60s, and then the next one is, you know, the 70s stuff, and it's going to go all the way, I think, to the 90s. So
Okay.
it's a pretty interesting project to take on, you know.
Are you going to illustrate? Are you going to do one? Is that definite? That you'll be doing a sequel?
I mean, I'm not supposed to talk about it, but yeah, I'm
okay.
Yeah,
are you a fan? Or is this just a job?
It was just a job. They sent me like a bunch of records and stuff, and I'm pretty familiar with them now, and I have my favorites and all that stuff. But I'm not like, I don't know. I think it would be, you know, a big lie to call myself a deadhead or something like that. Like I'm
right.
But I like them. You know, it's a good band. It's fine.
But so did you just get paid a page rate on that then, and then no royalty?
Yeah.
If you don't mind my asking.
No, I got a page rate, and then I'm also getting royalties.
Great.
Yeah, so it's a very good project to be involved with. And I'm like Pete in this way that like I consider myself a working cartoonist. Like I take on work that comes to me, and I'm not too precious about stuff. As I always have time to do my own work, and that's really great. But I also really love any illustration work I can take on, or any kinds of comics and things that I think are interesting in some way to me, I'll take on. And I just want to keep myself busy and make sure that I'm bringing money into my household and stuff. So it's a job. It's my career, for better or worse. So
you're very prolific.
Yeah.
That kind of work ethic is going to serve you well in any career, but especially I think in yours. Guys, if we can, let's talk a little bit here about international sales. This is something that Noah and I talked about a little bit. And Noah's like, man, if it wasn't for this books that I'm selling outside of this country, I don't know what kind of cartooning. I know Mr. Bagge, Petey to his friends, is very acclaimed all around the world, right? You were just talking about Spain. I've seen your stuff has been translated into many, many languages. So guys, tell me like, I don't know if you want to get into this kind of specificity, but like what percentage of your income comes from like not stuff published in other languages or outside of this country?
Well, for me, it's pretty small. My comics, especially Hate, was translated into a lot of different languages, but for some reason, and I have a pretty good idea what that reason is. It's mainly in Spain. It's mainly the Spanish edition has done really well, and that is because it's because of the translator. The translator did a really good job. He would ask me a lot of questions that like for example, the example I always think of is some character in one of my comics references Rush Limbaugh. And so here's this, he lives in Spain. So he wrote to me, he always writes me with a bunch of questions. And he said, who is Rush Limbaugh? So I explained to him who he was. And he goes, okay, fine. He goes, there's a Spanish version of Rush Limbaugh. I'll just change it to that guy's name. Okay, good. But then I thought, no other translator asked me that question. So it's like, What did they write? What did they put in this place?
Who is your publisher there? Is it La Cupola?
Yes. Yeah.
But
for me, the foreign royalties, it's not much. It's a tiny percent. There might have been times in the past, and again, almost entirely because of the Spanish edition that I made pretty okay money. But for the most part, it's pretty negligible. Also, years ago, there briefly was a German edition of Hate.
I think I've seen that one too. In Spanish, is it Odio? Is that what I've seen? Yeah,
yes.
That's right. Yeah.
As in odious. And in German, the German publisher insisted on calling it Lech mich, which means lick me. And I said, that sounds really stupid. And I'm like, that's a really stupid name. It's that like in America, if somebody had to name their title Lick Me, everybody would think that's really lame and stupid. And they go, trust us, Peter, in German, in Germany, it's really cool. This is really cool name. So I was like, all right, fine. So I had to design a logo that said Lech mich. And I was like, I'll take your word for it. That's really cool. And then when I got there, I asked my German friends, so is that a cool name? No.
Oh, it's not cool.
That's a terrible name.
Oh shit!
Yeah, but were they square Germans or what? Or were they hip Germans? The ones who called it that, obviously they were pretty square. I mean, I shouldn't put them down. They were very nice. It was for a company called Carlson. They used to have a lot of money. They paid me very, very big advances. Except that then, I don't know, the wheels came off the company. I don't know, backers backed out. I don't even know if they exist anymore. But they used to be really big. They used to be a huge company. But yeah, everything just fell apart. The people I was working with, they all got fired. Yeah, it was kind of a mess. But they sure had a lot of money. I took my family to Germany, and they just really treated us like royalty. It was fantastic. But then the next thing you know, they're all laid off, and one of them committed suicide. Oh. Everything fell apart really fast for them. Here I am laughing. No, it was terrible.
Yeah, that's the best thing about it.
Yeah, sorry.
You know, like I get to travel. You know, I've got to see other countries that I should not have ever been allowed to go to. I feel like so lucky. I remember one time when I was in Paris, I went to Angoulême last year, and I was just like, at a certain point, you sit there and you're like, like from the beginning of my life, I shouldn't be here. Like, this is not for somebody from my like economic ladder. Like I shouldn't be able to do all these great things, and it's all because like these people like the way I draw or something. It's pretty amazing.
But you're making good money off of foreign editions.
Yeah, well, because I'm, in
which country? All of it. Which country?
Yeah. So I'm really prolific, but like Fonte Bukowski was translated like everywhere, and so that was a pretty awesome experience for me. And because of that, like now it's like any books that I do, I have like a string of publishers all over the world that will put out their own editions of it, and then there's magazines that I'll do work for in other countries and things, and I really like it, and it's the best thing about all this.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's great.
I'm glad to hear that.
I've been published in Italian, but every single time I've been published in Italian, I was completely ripped off. Like, they didn't even ask for my permission.
Oh, really? Wow.
And of course, they didn't give me a penny.
Really?
There's been different Italian editions from different publishers. Every single one of them ripped me off completely. Didn't ask for my permission or anything. One of them, even like an editor or publisher, I was in Spain. He goes, "Hey, I'm your Italian publisher," and it's like, I can't believe you're telling me this. It's like, nobody knows better than you that one, you didn't ask me, and two, you don't give me any money. And he's like, oh. But he couldn't wait to introduce himself to me.
Yeah.
Hey, man, what's for you? We publish your book. We don't pay you, huh? All right. So, tell us, Ethan.
Keep calling me Ethan. What's wrong with you?
Because I'm looking at the comments. That you can't see, and I'm keep seeing that name. Okay, sorry. So
I don't care.
But so international sales, though, what percentage for you? Like more than half, less than half? You don't need to get specific.
No, less than half. I mean, but it's what it is just like an extra check. All of a sudden, you'll get like a check in the mail that you weren't expecting, and you're just like, oh, all right. So that's the thing about it. It's just surprise money, because it, like Fantagraphics is really good about selling rights. So I'll get just like just the other day, I got like a check for for the last volume of Fonte Bukowski. There's a Spanish publisher is putting that out and stuff. So I don't know, it's just nice.
Speaking of Eric E. Rock Reynolds,
name drop.
E-Rock.
So that's that international sales. Okay, a decent portion of what you're doing. But what is so barring that though, like other streams of revenue? I want to talk for a second about options, about like movie options, TV options. I know that hate was optioned many times. And when I read Fonte Bukowski, I go like, who, it has to have been optioned already by somebody.
I've never had any options on anything.
Because it would make a terrific movie. I'm not saying that's what it should be. It's an awesome comic, but I could easily see it being a really excellent movie. But Pete, do you want to talk a little bit about your experiences with like options and Hollywood deals and MTV or any of the like, man, there were so many times when it's like there's a hate cartoon on the horizon and little Danny was like, oh, I can't wait for that to go mainstream because I'll be able to say I knew hate, you know, I was reading hate from the beginning.
Yeah. Well, you know, it was, I'd been drawing comics for years before anybody ever expressed any interest in turning any of my properties into a movie or a TV show. But yes, I've had a lot of development deals. The money I get from signing an option is not much. You know, I've even signed option deals where there was no money changing hands. It's just, all right, go ahead. If it was a friend, they'd be like, go ahead and do whatever it is you're going to try to do. But it's the next step is a development deal where somebody will give you a big chunk of money, and it could be very good money. Yeah. And the idea is you write a script or co-write a script, a pilot script, and then also create something called a Bible, which is where you describe all the characters, come up with, just give an idea of the show, the tone of the show, the setting, you know, come up with ideas for future episodes. And of course, it's mainly been hate or Buddy Bradley. That's been in development quite a few times. We all disappeared.
What?
Can you guys still hear me?
Yeah. Oh yeah, we hear you. I hear and see you. So does the hate series Bible exist somewhere? Like you have copies of a hate series development Bible? Pete, can you hear us anymore? We might have lost Pete. I'm gonna pull him out for a second and I'll pull him back in.
Yeah.
And we'll see if that helps at all. Pete, you still with us? He might be having a connectivity problem. So Noah, let's talk for a second.
Yeah. Well, I never had any dealings with that kind of thing. I wish. I'm kind of curious about how much money. Like I know cartoonists like Chuck Forsman, for example, did The End of the Fucking World. I don't know if do you know his comics.
I don't know that one.
He did like a show on Netflix, and then he
wait,
did another.
Whose was it? Whose show?
Chuck Forsman is a name drop.
Chucky. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, of course. Yeah. No, I haven't read that. Sorry.
But yeah, he's really great. You should read his books. But yeah, he lucked out because he got options for shows on Netflix, and the shows were good. Like there was actually a great product from his work. So that's the risky thing, right? I mean, that's what I would be afraid of.
Because I see your book, I read it, and I go, okay, this is Zach Galifianakis. De-aged, but they de-age him with all that new de-aging technology. Pete's coming because especially I don't want to give anything away, but the flashbacks to young Kelly and the fact that this was not the first time when he sort of did things in an anachronistic way. I don't want to give away the gags because it's so hilarious.
Yeah. Which story is this? I think I'm going to lose the two of you again.
We're talking about Fonte Bukowski again, but
yeah, there you go.
You got us, Pete? You with us still? Okay, so we might have to let's vamp for a second here. Maybe Pete will come back, maybe not. We'll just have to see. Sure. So we're almost ready here, though. I mean, that was one of the things that I wanted to talk to you about because I really felt, you know, and how do you feel about that? Because one of the things in your book was the author, the girlfriend, your girlfriend in the book, who's like, they want to adapt my book and make it into a shitty movie. And that's going to kill my reputation or my credibility, maybe in the literary circles and stuff like that. So like, would that be a thing if like you got offered it? That would have to go through your head and you'd have to think about that, right?
I don't care anymore. I probably would have cared at one time. Now, just like, give me some money. I don't care. I don't give a shit. Just give me a share.
No, the money is good, and so it's very hard to say no to it. But with every development deal I've ever had, it drove me crazy. Everybody just drove me completely insane. Every single time I sign on to another development deal, I keep telling myself, I'm not going to let them get to me. I'm not going to let these people drive me crazy. You know, it's got to be water off a duck's back. Just be casual about all of it, and it never works. It never sticks. I'm still. It literally makes me feel like I'm going to have a heart attack every single time. A big difference. The biggest.
Fucking.
How many times?
We keep. I'm constantly losing you guys. Am I disappearing?
No, you're not. We're seeing you. We're totally seeing you.
I keep. Oh, that's terrible because you guys keep disappearing on me. But yeah, I'll just say before I lose you again. It just. It's a big. There really is a marked difference in the world of publishing and the world of comics and Hollywood and show business, because in Hollywood, just about everybody, even if they have the best intentions, everybody lies all the time. You never know what the truth is. And there's always meetings being held that you don't know about. You'll be like on a conference call and everybody's like saying. And you're on this conference call with a whole bunch of other people, all the people that you've been working closely with, co-writers, producers, the people who brought you on, people who optioned your work. And this happens all the time. They'll start talking about, they go, so that as we were talking about, or as we all agreed at last week's meeting, and I'm like, I wasn't at that meeting. I didn't. But you all agreed on something. You made an important decision there. That's great. That's really fantastic. I'm so happy for all of you. It's like, why do you even bother? And as time goes by, too, you could tell they really resent talking to me at all. They'd really just rather just run off and do their own thing, And that seems to be getting worse. That seems to get worse all the time when I'm on conference calls. And where it really feels like this is my property and nobody is listening to me.
Right.
Like they'll say, what do you think of that idea? And I'm like, well, I think blah, blah, blah. And then they all talk over me. And it's like they don't listen, literally don't listen to the creator's input. And that just keeps getting worse and worse. But, they throw good money at you. So what the hell?
I think I would just not even take part in any of it. I think I would just be like, you can do whatever you want. I'm going to stay over here doing my comics, and I'm not going to get involved in whatever you do.
Alan Moore more or less does that.
He doesn't even take the money.
He doesn't take
it right there.
He gives money. The artists get money, right?
The artist.
But he won't take
share to the artist. He gives his share to the artists.
Really? Yeah, but I don't know. That's hard. That's also very hard to do. It's like, what's it going to look like? What is it going to be like? And that might be the smarter way to do it. But I mean, that's what Crumb did with Ralph Bakshi. And I know some people liked Fritz the Cat, but I thought it was horrible. And that's a lot of Crumb's peers were like, Crumb bellyachs all the time about that movie, but the movie helped make him more famous, and it's not that bad. And when I finally saw, I couldn't even finish watching it. I thought it was terrible. And when I told Crumb that, he was like, "Thank you." He goes, "Everybody keeps telling me, oh, I loved it." He goes, "I hated it." And I was like, "Yeah, well, I'm with you. I hated it too."
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, and someday when we get Bobby in here, we'll go into all that stuff. We'll go deep. We'll go deep on the Bakshi years for sure.
There you go.
So, guys, let's open it up to some viewer questions. We've been on for a long time. It's been really interesting talking to you guys about all this stuff, but there's some other questions out there. So I'm going to pull up some of the comments. First of all, let's see. My favorite are the anti-me comments. So I like to bring those up early. Let me see what I got here. Oh, wait, I'm going to turn on the settings so that you guys can see the comments too. And you guys, if you see one that's particularly jumping out at you, you can talk about it. So I'm just going to go quickly through. We got some shout outs from, this is a loyal member, Coffee Breath. He's in our, he's a very good member. You're going to see his name in the scrolling credits at the end of the show. Oh, we lost Bags out. Gotham City Comics is plugging themselves. They're in Mesa, Arizona.
I grew up in Mesa, Arizona. It's great. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Have you been to Gotham?
I haven't. No, I just was there for probably 10 years of my life in Mesa, maybe shorter. I can't remember. Yeah.
Oh, Pete's back. Nice to see you.
This is going to keep happening. You guys keep disappearing on me.
Nice
to see you wearing a shirt.
Yeah, in my last live stream, I had a green shirt on, so my torso was invisible. And
okay.
So hi, Gotham City Comics. I'm just going through. We love Hijinks, talking about my old comic book store, Hijinks Comics in San Jose. We love you guys. Seems more and more YouTube and other platform comic channels coming out during lockdown, which is great for us fans. I agree. The world's loss has been comic book news's gain, because these guys have nowhere to go and people to talk to. How has this been working for you? Have you guys been doing a lot of other live streams and getting out there during lockdown time, or what?
I have been. Yeah, I did like a panel for San Diego Comic-Con a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, just one or two.
Yeah.
I'm working on it won't be out till next year, but I'm working on for a website called Great Courses. I'm doing a how-to.
That's cool. Wow.
What was that?
That's awesome. I didn't know that. That's cool.
Yeah, I'm going to show some sample pages from Hypo.
Are you?
Yeah.
Oh, all right.
Talk about your lettering. Going to talk about your lettering choices.
How cool. Hey, Pete, I've always wanted to ask you this question. I think I read an interview with you once where it said, like, when you do your work, like, you do it on tracing paper and turn it backwards to get the layout. Could you tell us the insanity that is your process for a second?
Right. Well, I'll have the page all roughed out. I'll have a rough of it that I draw on printer paper, and then I'll lay out the strip on the Bristol board. By lay it out like in pencil, the panel borders will be ready, and then I put a tracing paper over that, and I draw the whole strip on the tracing paper. First in light pencil, then dark, and then I flip it backwards and I draw it backwards. And by looking at it back with a very dark, soft pencil, by looking at it backwards, I'm able to fix a lot of things. I don't know if it's a real thing or not, but I call it a visual dyslexia, where it's like I'll know that I got something wrong, but I can't figure out how to do it. What's wrong? And when I look at it backwards, I see it immediately. There's an old trick artist teachers used to suggest when you're having that problem of holding your drawing up to a mirror. And if you do that, you'll see what is wrong in the mirror. The biggest problem that I have is if somebody's walking or running, where most of their body weight is. I'll get that wrong all the time, and I have to draw it backwards to fix it. But so then I take the tracing paper, put it back on top of the Bristol board, and rub it. I transfer the penciling on. But another great thing about that is sometimes you'd wish somebody's head was a little higher or lower, or something was more to the left or the right. So when you put the tracing paper down, you could shift it. Even if we're talking about like an 1/8 of an inch, you could still shift it around to perfect the composition. So, and it's time consuming to do it.
Yeah, some people might use digital techniques to kind of do that same thing super quickly. Noah, are you doing any digital pre-work, or is it all analog pencil paper?
Yeah, pencil paper. And then even the coloring is a mix of Photoshop flat coloring behind like watercolor and like colored pencil, stuff like that.
So you are doing a little bit of color. You're doing your flats in Photoshop.
Yeah. That's the extent of my use of computers with my comics. I like to have actual original artwork. I don't like drawing on a computer, and I use colors on Photoshop just to boost the colors that I put down with like watercolor and ink wash, and because I like that texture and I like kind of a messiness in the drawing and the coloring and stuff like that. So yeah, it's a weird, Yeah,
the same here. Yeah, I scan the art and might clean up the scans and then color it. That's also how you send your work to the publisher, is scanning it. You send them a digital version. You don't mail them the original art anymore.
Well, I did that with the Hypo. I mailed all the artwork to Fantagraphics, but I did it like during Christmas break. So like everybody was gone from the office, and I think the artwork just like sat out on the porch.
Oh, great!
Oh my god! Oh my gosh!
I will say though, the one thing that is making the option of doing everything digitally, what's making it more appealing, is art supplies are getting so bad. I don't know if you've noticed that, Noah, but everything, paper, especially kneaded erasers, what the hell are they doing? It's just a ball of oil, you know, and it leaves more marks than it picks up.
I know.
Quality's going down on art supplies, huh?
Yeah, it's terrible. It's terrible.
Okay, talking about the comic book shopping network that I mentioned earlier. 3 retailers from the CBSN bought a total of 40 books from us and sold them all over Facebook to their customers. Jesse James, Jen King, Kevin Johnson. We're going to have a couple of those guys. We're going to have Jesse James on our show talking about the comic book shopping network. But I know he's reaching out to indie publishers, making deals with them to move quantities of books on their shows, doing a lot of things, really stuff that we see in the home shopping networks, you know, in the real world, if you will, but bringing it online into comics. And man, I think it's amazing. My local LCS, local comic shop, A1 Comics in Sacramento, great shop, by the way, runs a similar online auction like that on Instagram and Facebook. There's other people that are doing this, but the CBSN is doing it 24 hours a day. There's always a retailer on that one network channel selling stuff, which is interesting to me. Hi, guys. Oh, and here's why. So there's a super chat. This guy paid $5 to say, could Noah say hi, Comicsgate, and does he ever draw Cyberfrog? So this is what I kept looking at, and it kept making me think of the wrong name. So I apologize.
Sure.
You don't have to say that. You don't have to say that, but you can answer the question if you want.
Yeah, I Cyberfrog was like a comic that my brother was drawing when I was a kid. So that's what's funny about One Dirty Tree is like I drew Cyberfrog in the book because it was all about my childhood. So there you go. There's a drawing of him. So for me, that's like a weird, like personal comic because, like, I mean, I was reading that stuff as a child, so it's nothing new to me, you know.
The complex opinions of Margaret Sanger must have been a dicey thing to parse in a biography. Any thoughts from Peter on that topic? That's one thing I meant to bring up. Thanks, Heroinberg, who, by the way, is a comics creator herself or part of a comics creating group out of Pittsburgh. And I've got some of their comics here. I'm going to be reviewing them soon. I thought it was the thing that I didn't really know, and I guess this was fairly well known about Margaret Sanger, was that while she was one of the founders of Planned Parenthood, she was anti-abortion.
Right. Well, she died in 1966. Margaret Sanger did, and abortion at the time that Sanger died, abortion was still illegal in all 50 states, and Roe v. Wade didn't happen until 8 years later. So it wasn't with Sanger and with Planned Parenthood. It wasn't even an issue, you know, about providing abortion. It was just plain old illegal. And
sure,
she personally was against abortion. You know, it had a lot to do with her experience as a nurse and seeing botched home done abortions, and that also was one of her many reasons to make birth control legal, so that if people are using birth control, they won't have to abort. But yeah, to me, the controversial things about Sanger, like what she said, the dicey things about her, that wasn't a problem with me at all, because everything, the bad things that people know about Margaret Sanger are all total lies. I feel like I'm trying to hold up a tsunami of lies. It's impossible. People are so eager to believe the absolute worst about anybody. So if somebody says, oh, so-and-so who lived 100 years ago, so-and-so was a racist, everybody automatically believes it. I guess it automatically makes you a better person if you believe it. She wasn't racist even for her time. She wasn't racist at all. Everybody believes all these lies about her. What's interesting, too, is how right-wingers and very conservative Christians, how they've totally conned and totally played people on the left by playing their own game. They wanted to destroy Sanger's reputation because they're pro-life and they hate Planned Parenthood, so they said, let's go after Planned Parenthood's founder. So they just say all these lies and distortions about her, and people on the left gobble it all up. They all believe it, and it's a total lie. It's a complete lie. I get upset talking about it because it never goes away. I'm on Twitter, and every time somebody brings up Sanger or repeats a lie, everybody jumps right on. They all jump in, like everybody on the left. All these people all these people who are pro-choice, they immediately believe these horrible things about Sciver that aren't true at all. They're not true at all. They're all lies. So yeah, I had a very easy time writing about her and her dicey opinions because they weren't dicey.
Awesome.
Sorry about that. I know I always get really worked up.
I think that's great, Pete. I thought that is great. That's really important. It's obviously important to you, and you're passionate about it, and it shows in your work, and showed right here.
Right.
So what else we got here? Pete Bagge sounds kind of based secretly. I think he's kind of say biased here.
Based secretly.
So guys, I don't know if you know.
That's true. I am based secretly.
Pete speaks his mind. He's telling you what he feels, and like so he's not holding anything back. Yeah. Oh, right. Peter Bagge has a secret base. Yes, as we all should. That's totally true.
That's real.
Okay. A spoonful of mercury will cure what ails you. Here's a health nerd question for Q&A. Do you long-term pro drawers have to do anything proactive about avoiding back problems? That is a good question. Or carpal tunnel or that kind of stuff. What do you do because that's your lifeblood?
Well, for me, it's every now and then my back will start bothering me. It'll start to stiffen up and I can't get comfortable. This is something that happens maybe once every 5 or 10 years. And all I have to do is get a new chair, a new drawing chair, or just alter the height or put extra padding on it. And that seems to always fix it immediately. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Well,
See, I mean, I every once in a while my back will start killing me. But I'll just go lay down or something. I didn't think about adjusting the chair kind of stuff. That's good.
In my business, standing desks are super in vogue these days. Any cartoonists in those that you know of?
Yeah, a few of them.
Yeah, I'm not cartoonists offhand, but I know people who, when they go to work, they stand up because of
Yeah, but I wonder about drawing. Is it like, how could you do it? Could you do it?
I'll bet I could do it. I wouldn't want to do it. I'm lazy, but I think a lot of people. Yeah.
When I first was talking to the people at Great Courses about doing this online how-to comics course, the only thing that they'd done up until then that was remotely like that was a painting class. And so the painter, he's the painting is practically vertical. And they were going to set me up that way. They said, okay, so we'll have it set up and you'll be standing there and trying. It's like, I've never drawn like that in my whole life. And they were like, how are we going to shoot it then? And it's like, have the camera point down. And I was like, oh, there you go.
I'm just going to real quickly go through a few of these because some of these are just kind of shout outs. Chet is the best. There's a name drop from Peter Holt, longtime fan.
Yeah. He doesn't get a droppy.
Sorry, he doesn't. I think he might be winning though, Peter. And he's calling out to Louis Riel in Manitoba. Let's see. Shout outs to Joe Sacco of Palestine. Someday, either of you guys know how I could get a hold of that guy. You got a contact you could hit me.
Talk to Eric Reynolds.
Okay, I will.
Yeah,
I Oh, E-Dog? Yeah, I'll talk to you.
Yeah, E-Dog.
All right.
I don't see droppy.
Oh, speaking of which, all right, those annuals were hard to come by, though. Talking about the hate annuals, they were, man. It was tough. When they're not coming out regularly, as a shop owner, when those were coming out, it's really tough for me to dedicate a spot to Peter Bagge's hate when there's only one issue coming out a year. If it's coming out 4 times a year, at least there was more realist. It was worth the real estate to have it, to have the issues on the stand anyway. And then not having it as a spinable graphic novel format made it really tough to carry it in an ongoing way that your fans might look for it.
All right. So does that mean Blammo has to start coming out once a month?
Please. By the way, Noah, tell me about Blammo and how we can get it.
Just go to kilgorebooks.com. They sell the issues. They're the publisher. They were like a little bookstore in Denver who started publishing comics. So they publish Blammo for me, and you can just get them off their website.
All issues still available?
No, there's probably 3 issues that are still available. There's 10 issues altogether so far.
Plans to collect?
I don't know. I probably won't collect them because the earlier issues are so bad at this point that there's no way, it's not worth it.
We'll wait till you're big and famous and you get a double hardcover slipcover thing for all your early work, like Peter.
Over my dead body.
All right. Noah doesn't want to collect several years of strips about obscure indie rock bands. If it's Denver related, why not have Westworld help to publish it? Fair question.
Nobody wants it. So
Nobody wants it.
Yeah.
Fair enough. This is why I just keep saying the wrong name. Sorry, call out to your bro. His name isn't even in the chat, right? I'm not seeing his name. I'm just seeing these references, and I apologize.
You have EVS derangement syndrome.
Obviously that's what I got. I love artists that stick to analog. They leave a lot of money on the table by not being able to sell originals. I guess he's saying those that you do digital first. Thoughts on that, guys? How much money you make selling original art? I know I reached out to Mr. Bagge a few years ago, almost 10 years ago now, and I bought a bunch of pages directly from you, Peter. I don't know if you remember that.
You were holding them up. You were just holding them up.
Well, a couple of them, but I bought a bunch from you and Blanchard too. I got a stack of Bagge.
Oh, and I do pretty good selling original art. I try not to sell too much at any one time, but don't want to swamp my own market. But yeah, right now there's a company called Heritage who auctions off original art.
I bought a page.
So I recently gave them a bunch of pages, so they're currently for over the course of like 2 months, every week they'll auction off something else, either a one pager or a multi-page thing. And it's good money. It's especially when I'm knee deep in like with those biographical comics that would take me years to make. It's the only way I could get by was auctioning off original art. I had to do it, because I couldn't. All I was doing was working on this book that, like Drawing and Quarterly would give me an advance, but that advance would be spent in a couple of months.
Have you seen the price that you're getting for your original art going up? Because I know the original art market in general for comics has exploded to insane proportions, like ridiculous.
I thought that it was with COVID. I thought it was going to die because I figured, well, nobody has money. But it's seemingly. But then my contact at Heritage, they said, send us some art because we're doing great. Yeah. The reason being, everybody's stuck at home and they need something to do, and they're going onto these auction sites and buying stuff.
Wow, cool.
Yeah.
Well,
so I never would. So with the money, considering the pieces I gave them, I didn't give them anything that I thought would go for a lot of money. But I'm very pleased with what they've been selling for, or at least for what I'm used to. I mean, it's a lot of some of my. It's very strange. I know some cartoonists who could barely give their original art away, and then some of my friends. I'm so jealous of how much money they make off the original art. They get 10 times what I get.
Well, I'm stockpiling my Bagge stuff in the unlikely, and hopefully it'll be a long time before they skyrocket in value due to your death. But on that note, got any estimates? Just ballpark when that might be, just so I could
when I'm gonna croak? Probably. It'd be a good guess next time I have a development deal with Hollywood and they finally do give me a heart attack. So it'll be then. I'll let you know when I sign another development deal, because that'll probably be the death of me.
Fair. Oh, and he said, it made you a boatload of cash. Let's see. Noah, hey, Noah, what's your most recent work and where's the best place to buy from that will give you the most profit? Good question, Planning Good Times.
The most recent one is the complete Fonte Bukowski, and you can get it. I think it's best if you get it directly from Fantagraphics or from your local bookstore.
Yeah, they sold it. I went into my local bookstore here and I asked them about it. They said, it came out and we had it in the window display, but because nobody could come in and browse it, this is what I found why I think it took me so long to come to your stuff, because you do this sort of mock book covers on kind of all of them, but especially on this one, right? And this is made to look like this American, I forget, Classics Library or whatever it is.
I can't take credit for that. That's Keely McCarthy, the designer at Fantagraphics. She does all my book designs.
Okay, so it's great, but it gives it this look
Mhm.
And I think was the idea that it's sort of like pretentious to be seen carrying around these sort of books, right?
Yeah,
But like that's the first blush when you see it and you go, Bukowski, fancy Bukowski. Like it just seems cringy in the way that it's meant to be cringy, but maybe not realizing. I don't know. That's just my theory.
Yeah.
I love it though. It's so good.
Thanks.
Okay, I bought One Dirty Tree off Amazon. I think that's where I got it too, because I'd never seen it anywhere else. I've never seen it in a bookstore, but it deserves it.
Yeah, I mean that's whenever I go to a bookstore and they don't have my books there, I just go, somebody must have bought them already. I don't know.
I must be what happened. It's on reorder. I just want to buy from the place that gives the most money to the creator. That's fair enough. I think that would be direct in most cases if you can.
Yeah, support Fantagraphics.
Okay. Reach out to these guys though for direct stuff. Like you said, you've got copies, Noah. So reach out to Noah. Maybe he'll even sign one for you.
That's right.
Okay. Oh, Mr. Bagge, nothing worse than film and TV producers and developers. Would you agree? Is that the lowest form of life?
The worst people in the world. No, I feel, Hollywood is full of very smart, funny, talented people. It's such a high stakes though. It's just the high stakes creates this very high pressure environment that just brings out the worst in people. And what makes it worse is everybody's trying to come across as very nice, sensitive, open-minded, and they might even be telling the truth, but it hardly ever pans out that way. But I don't know. I'm sure there's other people that don't agree.
Well, if you don't have that development money, Peter, at least you got the free food that you're always eating in the region.
Yeah, sure. That's something. Whenever I go to events, political events, that's something that I would always remember, and I'd always put it in the comic, or assuming they did have food, and that's why I always much preferred to go to Republican Party events than Democratic Party events. Because the people of the Republican Party, there'd always be these matronly women who were super friendly, always made sure you were comfortable, and there's always a great spread. There's always great food. Whereas at Democratic events, everybody was always miserable. All the volunteers are always reminding you, like, I don't have to be here. I'm just here to save the world is all. So what, you want donuts?
That was my question. What about a libertarian spread? What do they put out? You got to bring your own lunch, right?
That's a good question. I think they would. I haven't. It's funny. I haven't been to. This sounds strange. I haven't been to very many libertarian events. I've been to Reason magazine. I've been a couple of things that Reason had put on, and they would have food. Okay. Reason people are generous. They pay me good money too. Like
I got to remember, I got questions for you too. We got to talk when we're almost through these lists, but I got a couple specifically for Pete, because I'm really sad that you're not going to be doing those journalism comics, because who does not want to see Peter Bagge explore the Chop/Chaz in your backyard, dude? Who doesn't want to see that strip?
Yeah. At one point I thought about going, I live in Tacoma now, which is an hour away. I thought about, even though I was told, don't do any more journalism pieces, I thought of running that by my editor, but she probably would. It's like me just going up there and just getting the lay of the land. But I was told that it was very different during the day and at night. Like during the day, people said it was like a street fair, but at night, people were shooting each other.
Well, I
didn't know. I wasn't going to hang out there at night. But yeah, I'm sure that my editor would have told me no.
Well, there was a shooting, and that's all.
She wants to keep me away from crazy events.
I saw the shootings the shooting that happened at that thing. I saw news about it, and I was like, well, wait a minute. You're telling me we got rid of the police and there's a shooting, but wait, there's shootings every day when there are insane amounts of police around. So I kind of went back and forth on that. I've read so many mixed things about the Chop police. I don't know what to make of it, and I haven't been there, so I don't have an opinion. Yeah, that's why I wanted to know, because I used to live right by Occupy Wall Street in San Francisco, and I used to walk down there amongst it and see it, and I saw a lot of interesting things there.
Right.
Talking about Crumb and Fritz the Cat, I believe, talking about how much cash it made for Crumb.
No, it didn't. He got ripped off. He didn't.
Yeah. Right?
Yeah, he didn't. Crumb couldn't. At the time he couldn't work up the nerve to tell Bakshi to just give him a flat no. So he didn't give him a yes or a no. And Bakshi, being an incredibly ambitious lunatic, he started working on the movie before he even had the rights to it. So he got really desperate. So Crumb wasn't home, and Bakshi went to Crumb's then wife, his first wife, and gave her $6,000, and she signed. She had power of attorney, so she signed it. And then when Crumb was out of town, and when he came home, they lived like in a hippie commune, but she used the $6,000 to buy a pool. All of a sudden, Crumb had this swimming pool. The Crumb documentary, though, even though, of course, Crumb he wasn't making money off of the movie itself, that really raised his profile, and ever since then, he's been doing great. That movie really kickstarted his reputation and made him a household name again. So he's doing good. Talk about somebody who makes a lot of money off of original art, although of course he deserves it. He's my all-time favorite artist. But yeah, he's making great money.
I did some work for Dana Crumb, making a website for her back in the early 2000s or maybe late 90s, I think. And I got to meet Jesse and Adam Crumb, the two Crumb sons. And that's a whole other episode. We'll have to talk about that sometime. That was a fun one.
Jesse passed away recently.
Oh, I didn't know. Oh, wait, no, I did know that. Yeah, like maybe a car crash. Yeah, like
in Eureka. Yeah, it's terrible.
Yeah, in my neck of the woods. Right. Super sad. Yeah, I'm right. That's right here. I totally forgot about that, actually.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, well, maybe I was stoned out of my mind like this guy was when he watched Fritz the Cat. He thought it was pretty funny, though.
Right. Well, I guess that's to do with expectation. I read the Fritz the Cat comics. I read them a million times before I saw the movie, and I thought the comics were great. And then when I saw the movie, it's like, why didn't they just completely stick to the comic?
Totally.
Like Bakshi had to put his personal stamp in it. As this scene with dancing rabbis that, of course, weren't in the comic. It's so bad. It is so bad.
It's hard to picture.
Necessary.
I've never seen it. I still haven't seen it. Yeah. Should I say something rude, Shahin? You didn't get a hard enough time today. Yeah, you guys are being real gentle to me. You can bring it on. It's okay.
Oh, really? Do people usually meaner to you?
Oh, my gosh. Well, we're not going to go into it. We're not going to go into it. I did no hate, but so hard to have a copy here in Mexico. Get the Spanish copy, I guess. I also hear good things of Fantasy Pascal go via Comixology. Oh, is it available? Is that available in Comixology?
Yeah, you can do it that way.
Is it true that they take 70% of the cut?
Man, I don't know. I remember when I was there was like an era in comics when everybody was like, print's going away, everything's going digital, and it was this like really scary thing. Yeah. But I'm not afraid of that happening at all anymore because like I get my royalties from digital. It's like so minuscule. I just can't even. Everybody
using Comixology, especially on a cell phone, I hate it. I don't know why anybody would want to do that. The way they they digitized my sweatshop comic, and I was looking at it on my phone and just kept thinking, who would ever want to read this? This is so awful.
And they turn it essentially into like an animatic. If you read in that mode where they pull out, they zoom things out, they give you, because a master with years of decades of comics under his belt doesn't know how to draw the audience in to like really.
Yeah.
All right. $5 well spent. That was for the super chat that distracted me so much throughout this thing. If you throw $5 in front of me, I get distracted. I'm sorry.
Okay.
We saw this. I love artists that stick to analog. NVS. Do you also have toe thumbs and an obsession with pie? I don't know what that means.
What's that?
I don't know what it means.
Do my thumbs look like toes?
Yes.
Do they look like? I don't think so.
And what was the rest of the question? And an obsession with what?
Oh my gosh. Let's move on, guys. I'm sorry.
Okay.
We want to move on from that. Because I lost it. Actually, things are scrolling. The chat is starting to heat up right now. Here we go. We were referring to the eugenics issue. Yeah, right. That's when you were talking about Sanger.
Right. Again, it's very, very complicated. But the whole people can't talk normally about eugenics. Eugenics is a subject where these days when people reference it, it is synonymous with Nazism. And it's synonymous with Nazism if you were a Nazi, but it meant a lot of different things to a lot of different people. And with Sanger, it's very ironic. She tried to associate birth control with eugenics, believe it or not, to give birth control more credibility. It was considered a very seedy subject. And to give it more scientific credibility, she tried to attach it to the eugenics movement. And it's funny how and back then everybody was eugenicist except for Catholics.
It had a different reputation at that time, in other words.
Right. And it didn't mean you were, it's some people, if you weren't a racist and you believed in eugenics, it didn't mean that if you thought that eugenics was a good thing. To someone like that, including Sanger, it's like, well, do you think that with eugenics, do you think that that means some ethnic groups are inherently inferior? And her answer would be no. And a lot of people's answer was no. Everybody forgets that. It's one of these things that makes it impossible to talk about this stuff. When people start talking about eugenics, it's like you could tell that that's where they're coming from. That it's all bad. And it wasn't all bad. If you believe in, prenatal health care for a pregnant woman, you're a eugenicist. That was a form of eugenics that started with the eugenics movement and oral hygiene, all those things. It means good genes. And it isn't, for some people it was race-based, for a lot of people it wasn't. Now when you hear that word, people now, they just assume it was only racists put into that stuff. And that simply isn't true. That's another subject that everybody really has to revisit, because they're all putting only the most negative connotations to it.
Okay, so yeah, lead headline, Peter Bagge, pro-eugenics. Great, okay, let's move on.
There you go.
Just kidding, guys. But hey, on a lighter note, would a super chat convince Peter B to beg Chester Brown to finish underwater?
I tried. I felt terrible. I said, go ahead and finish it. And he says, no, I'm not going to finish it because I didn't know what I was doing. Oh well.
Yeah, also more people have more money to spend online, I guess, because they can't spend it at cons or other places. That makes sense to me.
Yeah, I suppose.
Sheena, I heard Tomorrow's isn't doing well. Can you give them a plug? Many items on their site. Sure, why not? I love Tomorrow's press.
Yeah, they're great.
They put out, there's a great, awesome book all about Peter Bagge, all about the work of Peter Bagge from Tomorrow's Press. I don't have it right here, but I have it and I've read it and I love it.
Oh, great.
Good info on Bobby Crumb, Peter. Saw an interview with Ralphie Boy Bakshi recently on the Kayfabe channel. And he seemed to yeah, they just had him on. Have you been on that channel yet or had an invitation to be on that channel?
No, I know when they first started, it seemed like they started out where the camera was frozen and it would just be on an old copy of Wizard Magazine.
Yes.
They would go through Wizard Magazine. I thought that was so funny.
Yeah, they would go back and forth. And they do the same thing though with Comics Journal of the same era.
Right.
And go in depth on the articles and the letters to the editor that are in there and every little bit of it. I love that channel.
Right.
That's the best YouTube comics channel. That's my favorite out there, including this one. They're way better than this one. They get better guests anyway. Look at what I got to deal with. Just kidding, guys. Just kidding. Okay, good info on Crumb Peterson. Oh, wait. We saw that one. Yeah, I saw that kayfabe interview. Okay, we're out of those. So really, that's it for the viewer questions. I want to thank everybody for that. I want to thank you guys for coming. Let's do some plugs here. Plug some stuff. How about Pete? What do you got? What's your latest? What are you working on, or what's the latest thing you want?
Well, what is going to come out in November in time for Christmas is The Complete Hate. It'd be like the Complete Neat Stuff. So it'd be this 3-volume hardcover slipcover version of Hate with all new covers and
oh wow.
Yeah, and that'll be out, I believe, in November from Fantagraphics.
Wow. All new covers?
Excuse me?
All new covers?
Yes. Well, inside the interior pages, you'll see the original covers. But by all new covers, I meant outside the slipcover.
Oh.
Kind of like what Dan did with the complete 8-ball.
Mhm.
And I did with
cool.
the complete neat stuff. Yeah.
Uh-huh. Black and white or color or both? I mean,
it's the same as the actual comic. So the black and white issues will be black and white. The color ones will be in color. Yeah.
All right. That's good. That's what I want to hear. Because that's the collection of hate has always been sort of incomplete. I was actually on my list of things to ask. That's really cool.
Right.
One of the coolest things about having a comic book channel is people mail me free comics. I just got this one today. Look at this. This is a Kickstarter 3-volume hardcover set that I'm going to review on the show soon. This is like self-published.
What is it up?
It's called Gladstone's School for World Conquerors. So it's like a supervillain Harry Potter type of concept or something like that, I think. Looks neat. 3 full hardcovers, $59.99 cover price. Gratis for Comic Book News. I love it. So, that reminds me, folks, if you want to have your comic reviewed or be a guest on Comic Book News, hey man, send an email to cbn@danshahin.com. Hook me up with some comics. We'll put them up. We're going to have the return of the $1 Million Comics Cam soon. That's a feature that I used to use a while ago that I haven't used for a long time. When I did my Peter Bagge review, I put a bunch of Bagge comics on the $1 Million Comics Cam. And we hope to be doing that live again real soon.
And does Noah have something to plug?
Yeah, the complete Fonzie Bukowski. Because like I said, it really suffered from the coronavirus,
Oh, right.
I think you're right, man.
Yeah.
Because to know what's going on, you got to pick this up and read it. And I've got a rule when it comes to funny comics that if it's in the store and I never read it, I pick it up and I open to a page and I read the page. And if I laugh, I'm in. So I just opened to a random page right here. And if this picture doesn't make you laugh, I'm seeing if I can get it.
You laugh.
Like the David Foster Wallace headband on Fonte.
Thanks.
Like that detail alone was enough to would have been enough to get me to buy it. But you could literally flip through almost any page here, and you're going to find some funny gags, man, and good cartooning to boot.
Great. Thanks for saying that.
Cool. No problem. And I mean it, man. I'm not saying it just because you're on my show. Like I would tell you it's good, but I really mean it. Like there were 2 books this year that I read so far that I go, how did I never read these before? Like I never saw any of your volumes, and I never read any of the WYSIWYG stuff from Ed Piskor.
Yeah.
You guys read WYSIWYG?
Yeah.
That is an amazing I mean, I'm a tech guy. I'm a computer guy. It's like that book was made for me, but somehow it escaped my attention.
Right.
And
that's fantastic. And it covers a part of history that I knew very little about, with the phone freaks and all of that.
Yeah.
Delve deeply into that. I thought it was a masterpiece.
Yeah, it's a great
so
book.
deep. The details, the in-jokes and everything else. I'm very well versed in that stuff. Like I love that stuff. And he got it like exactly right. I was waiting for him to do something. Every tech comic, they get so many things completely wrong. He got like almost every single thing completely wrong.
That's pretty funny. Well, good for him.
Yeah, tell him to come on in here and talk to me, though. I'm trying to get him in here, but we'll get him.
I'm surprised you can't get him in. I think
he wants to come.
Okay. Yeah.
He's busy drawing comics. He's too busy drawing comics.
Sure. Yeah, and he's running his own channel, which is like blowing up all over the place. So,
oh my god,
all the time,
and putting out like 20 hours of comics interviews with legends every week.
Yeah.
So great. Well, we'll get him in here soon, and I hope, guys, that we can get you back here sometime because this was amazing to me. Like I really, really enjoyed this conversation. Yeah. You guys read the kind of comics that I love the most and that get the least attention in the market.
There you go.
And on YouTube. So I really
we agree. All right. Well, I should get running, but it was great talking to you. It was great seeing you again, Noah. Hopefully we'll see you again in real life soon.
Yeah.
Good luck with
Peter, thanks a lot. We'll see you. Thanks for sticking around. Oh, oops. And Noah, if you got time to stick around, or Peter, if you have time to stick around, you can. But if you got to go, I know it's late. Go ahead and go. I got to do the wrap up here and the final credits, which will take just like 2 minutes. If you got time, stick around, we'll talk. If not, you got to do what you got to do.
Yeah, do it.
All right. I'll be right back, guys. Final thoughts here. Guys, this was great. I loved it. These were the kind of comics that I love. and the kind of cartoonists that I love the most, because there's a lot of great indie and independent cartoonists and autobio and bio comics. There's a lot of them out there. It's really tough to do those things and be funny. Also being a funny cartoonist is, I think, one of the hardest things to really do well. Both of these guys are super, super funny on top of being really talented, passionate, dedicated to their art and their craft and all of that other jazz. So this was great. This meant a lot to me. And it means a lot to me that you're watching and supporting. We've still got 29 people watching. Noah, I think, told me we set our goal to be 13, I think, Noah. And so we smashed through 13 really early on, and we kept it pretty high throughout. I might have rambled a little bit much. My apologies for saying the wrong name several times. That's really embarrassing, but like, what are you going to do? I'm only human. So guys, thank you for watching. Hey, if you haven't already, take a second and hit that subscribe button. I mean, if you're interested, you could even hit that bell thing and get notified of new videos when they drop. There's one other button too. It's a join button. You can hit that and you can see our multi-tiered membership system, right? So you could sign up for as low as $1.99 a month, or heck, all the way up to $100 a month. Yeah, that's right. You can slip me a C note every single month, and I will, well, you can click the button and find out for yourself. I want to thank Noah Van Sciver and Peter Bagge, Petey Bagge, and I don't know what the nickname for Noah is. We'll just call him Noah Van Sciver. I want to thank these guys so much for being here. They had other places they could have been, but they were here to talk with us, and I'll always appreciate that. So thanks again for watching. We'll see you next time. And don't forget to stick around. There might be one of those end credit cameo things at the end of the credits. Who knows?
Okay, lunch is over. Now back to work. Hiya, Mr. Flintstone.
Greetings, Rocky, my boy. Pack of Winstons, please.
Oh, you like them Winston cigarettes, huh, Mr. Flintstone?
But of course, they really got something.
You bet your life. Folks who really enjoy smoking know it's what's up front that counts. And that's where Winston steps out ahead of the crowd with their exclusive filter blend. Choice golden tobaccos, specially selected and specially processed for filter smoke.
Hold it, hold it.
What's your man?
What are you pitching Winstons at me for? You know I never smoke nothing else.
Just practicing, Mr. Flintstone. Everybody knows that.
Winston tastes good, like a cigarette should.
Yeah.
See you soon, Rocky.